What does world-class real estate look like to you?
Try to combine old-fashioned traditional estate agent values, but with all the modern tech that can help you move that forward.
Excellent communication is at the heart of what they do.
Great real estate looks like strong leadership.
Consistency.
This episode is sponsored by Iceberg Digital.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. Yes, you are right. I did nearly forget what we were doing there, but I am Mark Worrell. He is Ian Macbeth, and we are heading into our second of 3 face-to-face episodes that we're recording today, Ian, with today's guest, friend of ours, industry legend. I don't think it's probably too much of a compliment to Stephen.
I think, there's this thing going around at the moment about who's your Mount Rushmore of X, who's your Mount Rushmore of football or something like that. You'd have Messi, Ronaldo, Pele, Maradona potentially be there, and then you'd have your own for your club, And I was hearing about darts, so like, is Luke Littler already on the Mount Rushmore of darts?
I bet he is for some people.
But if there was the estate agency Mount Rushmore, Stephen Brown's on there.
Yeah. I don't know if we're biased because we know him pretty well, but I think if you speak to anybody in estate agent who's had any connection with him, there will be very, very few who have anything negative to say. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard a negative thing about Stephen. He often gets the tag of the nicest man in estate agency, but I don't think that compliment quite goes far enough to talk about his ability with words, his learning mindset, and the knowledge that he has that he can share with people on today's podcast and, future training sessions and all the stuff that he does. So I think, character-wise, it's a lot of positives, but actually in terms of knowledge, like you say, I think he's right up there with the very best, if not the very best. I don't know.
I'm in exactly the same sort of mindset as you. We know Stephen very well as a person. I'm excited to get him on the podcast and talk to him about him as the estate agency trainer. Yeah. And actually, who is he training? What are you training? What have you got going on next year? What are you deep dive researching into? What are you seeing with the different tiers and levels of estate agents in and around the country? Because he gets a real good kind of bird's eye view of what the industry looks like today and the future because of the new ones that he's training, and how are things evolving and changing, and has it changed or is it fundamentally the same? So I'm quite looking forward to that. And obviously he's got a dulcet tone that you can just sit and listen to. So that's going to be definitely one that I'll listen back to. But shall we get him on?
Let's do it. Stephen,
welcome to the show. 10 minutes up the road for you, I believe we are.
I know, thank you.
Yeah, we did that just for you.
It was very kind of you. Really appreciate it.
This is a home game for you.
This is a home game, yeah, very good.
We were talking Wonder Kids off camera, so I'm going to link that back to estate agency for people that are thinking, what is he going on about there? Football Wonder Kids. But first of all, Mark's always got a question for every guest that we'll kick off with.
Stephen, what does world-class real estate look like to you today?
Good question. I wasn't expecting that one. I haven't listened to about how many hundreds of episodes you put out there. So for me, it's about creating relationships with sellers, buyers, landlords and tenants, so they become clients for life, by giving exceptional customer experience, and just giving great service. Is one way. I think agency is very simple and people complicate it. From an agent's point of view, I just think it's about 4 things: creating opportunities, being superb listers, being able to sell, because if you can't sell, you might as well go home and shut up shop, and also being a skilled negotiator. And I think so many agents leave so much money on the table, and we as agents can change people's lives with the money that we can negotiate, and it's scary. And I go and I did a negotiation masterclass this week, and how many people bought a home, how many people did you buy for an agent, and how much more would you have paid? And the most there was £21,000. They would have paid more. So much money is left on the table. So it's about how can you create a lifetime customer, where ultimately you give them an exceptional customer experience. So they recommend you to friends, family, colleagues and neighbours. You've got loads of raving fans. So actually when you turn up, you're the only agent that goes in and you get the fee that you deserve. and every agent should be getting more than what they get because of the value they deliver. All the good ones. The ones that are listening to this would deliver exceptional value. And finally, I think it's about being a one-stop shop. And I think Ian has mastered it. So when people come, they can go to you for a mortgage. They can go to you for a survey. They can go to you for wills and whatever. So everything's there. So you're just making it as simple as possible and as easy as possible for the consumer. And they're the most important people. And then the final thing I would say is it's about educating. I don't think we educate enough all the different categories about what the process is. A lot of people don't sell, for 20, 30 years. They don't understand the process. A lot of people maybe have never bought before, or they're buying a buy-to-let property. So it's about educating and helping your community is the final thing. Doing stuff with your community, because I think that makes some massive, massive things. So I think you got it nailed, GT.
We'll just clip that and use that, I think. That's the mic drop.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. See you later. Okay, now I can go back home.
The bit that you mentioned about the end, educating, obviously talking about estate agents educating the public. We were talking about, the next generation of footballers coming through off camera, but you're in a position where you train all types of estate agents, from the new ones all the way up to kind of the senior level. So I'm just interested on your training this year. What's your kind of feelings around the new crop that are coming through? Because some of the people I talk to are in the same bracket as me. We've done it 20 years, 15 years, 25, and it's easy to be negative. But then the batch above me were negative about my crop. So it seems to be a thing that you do. But what are they actually like?
They're most probably open-minded. They don't have any preconceptions.
Okay.
So, a property comes on. Somebody who's been there for 6 months, 1 year may think, oh, that property's awful, it's never going to sell. They come in very open-minded, and guess what? That property sells within the first month.
Yeah.
So we, as agents, need to have that mentality, that first day mentality, the whole time, and take it in. And I know it's hard, because we know this is a roller coaster. We're going to have some amazing days. We're going to have some really shit days. We're going to have some really horrible conversations with our consumers. We're going to have some horrible conversations with our colleagues and our teammates. And that's it. I think there needs to be more of an appetite to learn. Mm-hmm. And I think people need to have, whatever category you are, whether you start to invest in yourself. And I think that's the one thing I found when I've gone to Australia, and I've been to AREC twice, where you've got 6,000 people at the conference. They're investing in themselves. How many people, when they go to their conferences, are expecting their bosses to invest in them? And there is so much content out there. So again, if I was, starting today, it's go and find out who the best people are in the industry and actually go and meet them, ask questions, ask how have you got to where you've got to? How have you got to where you've got to? What have you done? Because if I was starting today, I want to learn from all of you, and I look at Joel, who's at Location, my son, and his learning growth has developed incredibly, because that company is a learn it all company. They want to improve, they want to get better. So, Joel is, what audio books have you got on? Can I take them? Can I listen to them? Can I learn? It's great, but it's whether they've got to want to do it. Yeah. They've got to have that mindset. I think the difference is maybe with me, work ethic. So, and don't know whether this, because I'm out of it now, but, I'd be in at 7. I leave at 7. I'll come home and I'll still be working. And that's most probably my biggest regret. Whereas I think you've got a better lifestyle now than I ever had. And I would like to think that people coming through today should have that better lifestyle. And the word, it's like work. It's not about that anymore.
It feels like that generation that's coming through. If we talk sort of general, I was talking about it on a podcast recently from a tenant and a buyer perspective. It feels like people want more time to be free, and first time buyers don't stretch themselves at the same level as what previously people wanted the max they could get for the maximum house they could get. Whereas now actually they're looking at it and going, I don't want a 40-year term. I want to pay this off in 20 years. How do I get a good fixed rate on a house that I need rather than a house that I desire? And how do I get mortgage free by the time I'm 45 because I want to live that life later? It does feel that, I think maybe lockdown had a bit of an impact in that. But, and again, tenants, you know, there's people that want to be a tenant for life because they want the freedom. They don't want to be tied down by finance. They want to be able to move abroad if they want to move abroad or change locations in the UK. So I think that world that we're experiencing now is a little bit different. That seems to be the focus trend. That 7 till 7, 8 till 8 kind of Foxton mentality seems to have gradually disappeared from the industry.
For the better. That will allow us to bring better people into the industry, won't it? You know, the people that are coming in, if you've got the option now of doing a job that is maybe a little bit over minimum wage, but expects you to do 7 till 7, you're not going to take that. Not when minimum wage has gone up so much.
It's crazy. Honestly, it's crazy. And you miss out on life.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
life's too short.
It is too short, you know. And we're sat here, and Sam was literally in the cancer hospital I visited there for about 10 years. So that was my second home over there. So I know life's too short for sure.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before, fabulous answer to world-class real estate. I loved that you kept saying, one final thing, and there's always more to it. That's kind of the beauty of it. It's why I've been able to ask the question so many times and get so many different answers. But one of your answers was negotiation. So do you think negotiation is a skill that estate agents think they're good at when actually they aren't?
I think negotiating is a skill. I think people are very, very lazy. I think it's most probably down to what they think. Estate agents are thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about their consumer. So, you know, they know a seller's going to take X. So great, I just get X. They don't push. They don't get that no regrets offer. You know, they don't say, thank you so much for your starting offer and put that forward to the seller. If the seller says no, what's your no regrets offer is? And I must have asked that question, I reckon, 1,000 times this year. And only 2 people have said I wouldn't pay any more money. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when I ask that question, they all start off and say, I wouldn't pay any money. And then the highest ever was £438,000 more that they would have paid. It was a £4.5 million mansion house, but they did all their research. And this was a top class that you would have, I won't name them because it's unfair, but this was a top class estate agency, high end estate agency that cost that seller that amount of money. So it doesn't matter whether it's £250 or £458,000, that can make a big difference. So because look, do you know what? That's not going to make any difference on my commission. You know, if I get them 250 quid, what's that? It's nothing. So they stop. They're lazy.
I look at it, and I say this to my clients, I look at it as a point of professional pride, that our job is to get you the very most money that people will take. And I think my opinion on it is a lot of estate agents just pass messages rather than actually go through the negotiation process. Is that what you see as well when you're
it's just ask better questions. It's prepare. You know, are you getting offers in writing? Are you asking them how they've arrived? Help me understand how have you arrived at that offer. You know, I really want to understand how you've got there. You know, what your reasons why. You know, is there alternatives to getting a agreed deal? I don't know if you've ever done it, but if we weren't able to agree a sale within 5%, we'll end up doing a face-to-face meeting with a seller and buyer, and that worked really well. And I think what's interesting now, going back, how many agents are going back and looking through the old offers that haven't been accepted to see whether there's opportunities there and deals to be done. And if those can't get the deals done, but what happened to those buyers that didn't buy? You know, so I know there's a lot of talk about what's going on in the budget, and is the market gone on hold? Well, for some agents, most probably the market went on hold about 3 months ago, and it will come back in February. But the proactive ones, they're the ones that are doing deals now. They know who their hot buyers are. They're being matchmakers. They know who their motivated sellers are. They're doing deals. People always need to move. You know, find out who those people. But coming back to negotiation, don't be lazy.
I once worked in a team that whenever someone talks about negotiation, I always think about this team. There was 6 of us. It's the best team that I've ever worked in. I was a senior negotiator at the time, and every one of that team of 6 have gone on to either own their own agents, MD, employed, you know, kind of high level. They've all gone on to it. But we used to have 2 things that There was the negotiation of the fees from the valuer's perspective, and then there was the negotiation on the deals. And for us on the deals team, we always went, right, we've wrapped up X, and the phrase was hundreds or thousands. Because if we were negotiating in hundreds, we'd pushed it to the limit. We knew that we'd done the deal right by the seller. And that was the phrase, are you at 335 or are you at 335, 750, for example? Because if you're in the hundreds, you've done that to the level you can get it to. And then it was ones or tens for the valuers. So with the fee, if you came back with anything that was a round number outside of 2%, what was the fee? If it's 1.75, you were in trouble. If it was 1.5, you were in trouble, because it should have been 1.55 because you pushed to the ones, not the tens. And whenever someone talks about it, that was the best. We were only together about 9 months until people got promoted and moved around. But those phrases that you had back in the day where you were driven by the people around you because you're like, shit, if I get this deal wrapped up without getting into the hundreds, I'm in trouble here.
That's great because you're pushing each other.
Yeah.
I mean, my girlfriend sold a property not a million miles from here, and she had 3 agents come round, and she said to me, look, Stephen, would you sit in and just have a conversation? So I said, yeah, of course. And the first one came in and they said, oh, you look really familiar. Are you in property? And I said, no. So I just sat and mind my own business, and then they did their walk round and whatever, came back and sat in a room, and they were speaking to Justine, asking loads of questions. And then Justine said, have you got any questions? So I said, yeah, your days on market are, say, 50 days more than your competition. Why is that? Sorry. And also, you achieve £20,000 less than your competition. So why should I use you? Yeah, I was a nightmare.
Get up and walk out.
And then they said to me, has my boss asked you to mystery shop us? And I said, no. I said, really, you don't get asked these questions? But here's the point. Sellers don't know what to ask because they're not educated enough.
Yeah.
And these are the questions that they should be asking, or we should be telling them to ask in order to do that. And then I said, so what do you charge? So he said 1.25%. However, but
of course it is.
If you instruct us today, we'd do it for 1%. So I said, that's amazing. Thank you. I said, I haven't even started negotiating downwards now. So you've already started for me. So thank you. However, if you're negotiating on Justine's biggest tax-free asset, what are you going to like to get her the best price when you're already discounting your own fee? And then
How big was the hole that you jumped into?
It was the weakest show of strength you've ever seen. That it's very old fashioned. Or I'll do you a deal, mates rates, and all of that. But I think it still goes on a lot. We had an instruction this week, and they sell motorhomes. So selling cars, selling houses, not that dissimilar. A lot of similarities certainly within the business. So we had quite a good chat about business and generally. And then he asked me to reduce the fee, and I refused as I always do. And on the take on, he commented to my colleague how impressed he was with the way that I batted it back, but it wasn't arrogant, it wasn't cocky, but it was firm. And I think if you're looking for the right type of client, they'll respect that you've got your standing. Whereas if you're just negotiating yourself, you're just saying, I just want the business, it's not important to me.
But does the agent actually value themselves enough, to justify it? I remember coming to the gym here at the village. This is pre-COVID, and there were 2 estate agents in the changing room, and they were talking shit. Okay, and they walked out the changing room, and one of the guy goes, "Estate agents are an effing joke. All they do is put properties on Rightmove." And I said to the guy, this is an estate agent saying that? No, this was a member of a public in the gym.
Yeah.
So just listen to their conversation.
Yeah.
And he just blurted out, estate agents are an effing joke. All they do is put a property on Rightmove. And I said, do you really believe that? And he said, yes. And I said, do you have a couple of minutes? And sadly for him, he said, yes. I said, I want to tell you the 50 odd things that estate agents do for the investment in their services. And at the end of the 2 minutes, he goes, wow, I didn't understand that. So it comes back to the education about what you actually do. And, I was doing some training this week and I said, right, let's write down every single thing you do. You go, okay, we do a lot. And look at the value we actually give. and what are the added values that you can put in that make you stand out and make you different as well? They're thinking, yeah, I can understand that. And, you look at some of your buyers are going to be your future sellers. So demonstrate to them what you're doing, make a difference, make yourself stand out. And it's scary. And when you work it out and you look at it and you go, hold on a second, we do an awful lot. So why aren't you charging for what you're worth? And then also, if I ask you both a question, do you think you're worth an extra £100 on your fees?
Yeah.
£200?
My opinion of myself is quite high. This could go on for a while.
Okay, so what number are we going to?
Couple of grand.
Okay, so fine. So what's stopping you from charging that extra £2,000 more if you believe you're worth it? And actually, if you're putting more money in that seller's pocket, isn't that more important to a seller? I don't know many sellers. If you have a conversation with a seller, what's more important, a cheap fee or more money in your pocket? What's most sellers going to say?
The latter.
Yeah, hopefully. And if they say the former, then you don't want to deal with them anyway. They're not the right people for you. So demonstrate your negotiating skills. I mean, that's been the biggest thing I've ever learned in the last, I think I took it away from Australia with 6 years, was the negotiating skills in front of a seller. And that's just such a simple way, such a simple technique to demonstrate, when you bought this property, would you have paid more?
Do you feel the public want to be negotiated any differently from when you started a state agency? Do you think the style and the technique has changed, or do you think the fundamentals are actually just the same? The art of negotiation is very similar. Do you think that's actually changed?
I don't think a lot has changed in agency. I think it gets overcomplicated.
Yeah.
I think if I go back to when I started X amount of years ago, a long, long time ago, and I come and do some training and I put on the board, right, let's do some brainstorming session. What's your biggest challenges? So it'd be negotiation, getting instructions, holding out my fee, price reductions, whatever it is. The sales process takes years. Why? It hasn't changed from when I was doing it 30 odd years ago. What is scary is we've got all this brilliant technology that's come in, especially on the conveying side, and it takes even longer. How the hell does that work? Technology should have brought it all forward, and we should be getting the days on the market down, and it's taking longer. So, I keep on coming back. I think agents is simple. I just think at times it's overcomplicated. Just keep it simple. Do the things. If you do the ordinary things extraordinarily well, you're going to be ahead of 95% of estate agents. Because I think I'm on record of saying 95% of agents are shit.
Yeah. I did hear that rumour.
Yeah.
What is the biggest overcomplication you see? You've talked about it now a couple of times that you think agents overcomplicate it. What elements of the role or within the industry do you think are most commonly overcomplicated?
Well, you've got so many opportunities in your customer base. So, everybody's spraying and praying and canvassing this and doing this and doing this and doing this. But actually, go through your customer base. Look at all the opportunities in there. Go back through people who bought in COVID. Just ask a really simple question. How's your living space? Too small, too big, need a bigger garden, need a smaller garden, hate my partner, especially coming up to Christmas. And
it's a January
conversation. January, yeah. And so my tip today, if you don't have a relationship with the divorce lawyers, go and speak to them, have conversations with them, because January, you may see yourself getting called in to a lot of people. But honestly, people are always chasing, I want more business, I want more business, I want more business. And I understand that if you're a new agency and you're starting off and you've got to do certain things, and Facebook and video and getting yourself out there and getting yourself out in the community. But if you're a more established agency, you need to be doing 1 hour of creating business opportunities every day. And ultimately, if you can get one market appraisal a day, it's 250 a year. You convert one into, that's 125. You sell 70. I don't know, the average UK fee is £3,000. That's an extra £210,000 worth of revenue a year. Why wouldn't you schedule 1 hour of creating relationships in your diary every day? And it's scary. For me, that's a non-negotiable. So you talked about Foxtons and long hours, but you also have got to have structure in your business. And for me, the number one non-negotiable is, where are those business opportunities going to come from? And you've got so many people. Have those conversations with people.
So we would typically call it prospecting, using the language, creating business
but people
opportunities.
don't like to prospect. If you say, right, who likes to prospect? Nobody puts their hands up. But then if you say to people, do you like to create opportunities? Everybody puts their hands up.
Yeah.
So then, well, what's the difference? It's like saying, do you like to role play? He laughing, not that sort of role play. Okay, calm down, okay. But it's like, do you like to role play? No. Okay, so you're an Everton and Chelsea supporter, so you wanted to get some football in. Do you think Chelsea turn up, and I know your answer is going to be yes, okay, turn up on a Saturday playing Spurs, thinking it's going to be an easy 3 points? Most probably yes. Okay.
Definitely at your place.
Yes. But do you think they practice everyday tactics? They go in, and professionals practice before they play. We are professionals. Okay. So that's exactly what role play is. It's understanding that you're doing exactly the same. So practice it. And the best agents are practicing on the Friday. Again, something I would schedule in my diary, or Thursday, whatever day it is. So practice, how do I negotiate? How do I become a better negotiator? What's the objections I've had this week on fees, on negotiation? Why wouldn't they pay more? Okay, Mark, you've been doing this a long time. How would you answer that question? Ian, how would you answer that question? Austin, how would you answer that question? And just go from there. And the more you practice, the better you become. But people...
I found practice can come a lot from listening as well. In my kind of early days, I was very interested in trying to make sure I had time to listen to other more experienced agents making calls, and then kind of almost making a mental note. Okay, that was interesting. They did that. Now, that's not my style, but actually on reflection, if I did the way they did that half and I did my half version, that might be a really good way to deal with that type of call. And then the practice came in almost watching and then putting it into play myself. And I think that's something that sometimes estate agency trainers over the years, and trainers, I mean branch managers, owners of businesses, not external trainers, but I include them in it as well, have tried to create robots. It has to be done this way, that way. And everyone's so different.
You have to do it in your own way.
Exactly that.
Because everybody comes across differently. And it is a relationship business, but you've got to feel comfortable. But what you've got to understand is, I would plan for every scenario. So look, if I get asked this question, what I'm going to say, and, just bringing it back, our good friend Andy Overman. So I remember him.
He's not my friend.
Your friend?
No, he's not my friend.
Okay. Our good friend, Andy Overman. I hope you're doing well, Andy. So he had a seller come round to him and say, look, I really want to use you. I know you charge 2%. I've had a 0.75% agent and a 1% agent round. And sadly, I can't justify the extra 1.25 of the 1%. So Andy said, look, why don't you get all of us, just say, I want to visit one of your properties that you're selling, okay, and see what experience you get. So the 0.75% agent turns up 15 minutes late, doesn't apologise, but says, I need to be not late for my next appointment in 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I remember this story.
The 1% agent turns up on time, in fairness, gets asked loads and loads of questions about the property. I'll come back to you. He's still waiting to hear. And he turns up on time. He's got the answer to every single question because he knows what every single question he should be asked. And the seller goes, I now understand why you're worth that 2%.
Yep.
Okay. So again, another tip is if you're struggling and they're saying, I'm going to go with a cheaper fee, say, go and see a property and see how you were treated and then make your decision before going ahead and making that decision, which could cost you money. You could put yourself using the wrong agent could cost you £20,000-30,000, and that's a life-changing amount.
Yeah, that 1% could scale into insignificance, couldn't it? You mentioned Andy there and location before. a great way to demonstrate value. But I want to talk a little bit about Joel and his learnings that you talked about there. At Moving Works, we're very keen to encourage our team members to go on the same path that we're going on of personal development and growth. My view is that if we all grow as individuals, collectively we'll grow as a company. And it's probably from, speaking and listening to people like Andy and Vicky. Then what does that look like if you take what you know about location out of it as a parent, seeing Joel and the journey that he's been on? Talk to me a little bit about that and your views on that, because I think that's a really important thing that we can learn as an industry and as employers to how we should be treating our employees.
I cannot tell you how proud I am of him. He's incredible. This is a kid that I'm going to embarrass him now if he listens to the podcast, but he really struggled going to school because of fire alarms. And he ended up not going to school on and off for about 6 months. And then eventually we had to take him out of school and he had to be reintegrated into a different school, and sorted himself out. And then when Sam passed away, he was the closest to Sam. So I thought he was going to really, really struggle. And actually, he's been the one that surprised me the most. And I think all the help he had and the therapy he had stood him in good stead. And I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason. And he is just, so he went and did some work in like summer holidays, or I got him a 2 weeks when they do their schools. And he loved it. And then he said, can I go back in the summer? And he went back in the summer and he got a place at university and he decided to defer it a year to go and work there and travel. And he's loved it so much. He hasn't gone to university.
That's the estate agency career path in a nutshell. Yeah. That is, yeah.
But he's doing all the social media. He's doing the marketing. So, as a person, he's developed their learn it all culture. They have weekly training sessions where actually Joel will have to take a training session. So you're getting out of your comfort zone to do something. You're doing it in a safe environment, but that's quite scary.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. I went there with Jerry Lyons on the Friday and they were doing, every single person in the office had to deliver a training session and they were all phenomenal. And actually, as agents, we present every day. But it is quite daunting getting out of your comfort zone. So I think it's definitely helped getting him out of his comfort zone. He's definitely got a learn it all mindset where he wants to develop and grow. And, Vicky's got an amazing collection of books out there. And I'm sure Vicky will be happy to share it. Vicky, I'm sorry if you're listening, got you into trouble. But, they just have got the most incredible culture. Vicky's done a couple of sessions for me on the Estate Agents Learning, and, they've been one of the most well attended. Systems and process really important. They're always looking at refining it, improving it, getting it better. But yeah, they're a great company, and what they do for their colleagues as well, phenomenal. And obviously they've just been awarded Sales Agency of the Year at EA Masters. So
I like the learning it through teaching it.
Yeah.
I think Jim Quick talks about that a lot. You learn it twice if you teach it, or learn it then teach it. You learn it twice. I quite like that, kind of putting everyone in that position to educate, because everyone's an expert in their own field typically. So having that from someone that you can relate to is a great way of just upskilling yourself by teaching it. I'm quite privileged that I do a lot of training with my squad at Avocado, but every time I do a training session, I'm learning it myself. It's ingraining in myself, so it's becoming a fundamental for me. So it's a great way of doing it. With 2026 looming, and obviously your plans for training, what are the type of new things that you're working on, or what are the type of main projects that you're working on at the moment from a training day agenda, if you like? What are you looking at as things that you want to try and bring value to the industry next year through?
So with Estate Agency Learning, that's an online platform. So it's 3 sessions a month, 1 hour a month. So the first session, I've got Phil M. Jones from exactly what to say, how to influence and magic words. And I think he's trained over, I think 2 million people in 50 continents overwide. And he is costing me a huge investment to bring to do. But from my point of view, I just want to help people.
Yeah.
So, I've got a former police negotiator who's going to do a session for me. I've got somebody who, Paul McGee, Shut Up, Move On. I've got a guy called Marcus Child who've worked with Olympians. So I suppose different types of mindset, stuff to help you grow as well. I got people from Australia, so Con Strelopoulos again is coming on, Matt LaHood, people like that. So Con this year talked about how to grow your business. You were talking about 10 times before on another podcast, and how he 10x his business. And one of the things that I got from John McGrath and Con was that I would be looking at my budgets today for next year and what you're doing, and whatever it is, think big. So he challenged Con and to say, right, what's your 6-month goal and what's your 10-year goal? And he achieved his 10-year goal in 13 months and his 5-year goal in 6 months. So, think big. Just honestly, if you're doing the basics, you're going to be ahead of the agents. I'd be learning more about AI. And understanding, what you should be using. Don't be left behind. Start things now because things are moving on very, very rapidly on there. But just do the basics exceptionally well. Become a better lister, become a better negotiator. Try and upskill yourself. I mean, I love these podcasts because actually you're learning from people. That's why I do the podcast as well. Because actually, and I know, go back to old podcasts, take the piss out of me, every day's a learning day. But actually, every day is a learning day, and you're learning from different people every day.
That's not taking the piss at all. That genuinely, I think it's on our intro.
One of the
intros. Not this one, the last one.
That's the man to.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Well, we've got the soundbite now and the visual, so it might be better.
I mean, you took me out of it. What can I say? So you rebrand and that's it. Bye bye, Stephen Brown. Hey, thank you.
I do think though, when people say do the basics, I think what's really important for anyone in any area, whether you're playing walking football or you're weight training, rugby, estate agency, running. Yes, do the basics, but you have to do them all the time. You have the discipline aspect of making these things habits. That's the bit where actually estate agents fall down, because we'll do the back to basics training and we go, oh yeah, I didn't do that, I've stopped doing that. Yeah. The problem is not that they don't know how to do it. The problem is they stop doing it and they know how to do it. That's the worst recipe for disaster that you can put in agency, and it's the discipline of keeping it going.
100%. So going back to ARIC 2 years ago, 30 different speakers, and they all said two things. So Ryan Serhant was one speaker, Ryan Reynolds was another speaker, loads of different agents there. Long and short of it, discipline was the number one, and two, you got to be consistent. And actually, the third thing is implementation and execution. And the fourth thing is most probably accountability. There has to be more accountability. People have to take more responsibility themselves. Yeah. But then actually, the leaders need to hold people more to account and to do it. And that's why I think it comes back to doing, that's why location, as an example, do well. You do well because you've got regular sessions. It's refreshers, reminding people what to do. The disciplines. I used to belong to a business group for 12 years, Vistage, and I went every month. And just after 3 weeks, I would feel like I was flagging. And then I went back to that. They gave me like an injection to get me going as well, to get me motivated and that well. And there was accountability the whole time, and that's what I try and do with the training, okay. They get a follow-up after, what's the one thing you're going to action as a result of it. And actually, I tell you what's scary.
No one replies.
No one replies. So I think I've most probably had well over 1,000 people doing training this year on the online platform. I can honestly say I think I've had 20 feedback forms as to what they're going to action and implement, because people just want to move on and that's it. And then, you know, people say, oh, well, what could I do after somebody comes to one of your training sessions? So get them to sit down with your whole team and tell them what they took from it and ask the question. And at the end of training session now, I ask everybody to come up with an action plan. Okay, so what are the 3 things you're going to action as you're training? Do you do one-to-ones with your whoever it is in your team? Yes. Right. I want you to give that to your managers, and the managers can hold you accountable and go from there. Now, whether they do that when they leave, I don't know, you know, that's up to them. But agents need to be held more to account. I think it's really, really important.
Those high-performing teams, you know, I spoke with you recently about one of the derogatory ways that we made people accountable back in the days when HR was a bit more lenient. But actually one of the best high-performing teams that I've seen agency is where you simply set yourself your Monday targets, you know, 3 achievable targets, and then on the Wednesday meeting, you get the update on how everyone's getting on with their targets. On the Friday, you review your targets, who's hit them, who hasn't. Because you're accountable, it meant on Monday you didn't overstep your target. You didn't want to be the person that missed the hat trick, for example, or missed the 4 targets. But what you were doing by that was you were putting yourself out there. They were written somewhere. You were made accountable. In the same way, whenever I'm doing something from a personal point of view, in a big scary way, normally it's running related, I'll put it out there. I'll put it out there, because once it's out there, the goal is not, the mission is normally attrition when it comes to running, is to finish, you know, when you're doing these big ones. And if you put it out there and you're in that frame of mind at some point where you want to tap and quit, but then you remember that you told everyone, or you remember you told your kids, and then you don't quit because you've told everyone. If you just did it on your own and just went and did it,
Easier, isn't it?
It's easier to quit. And that accountability is so key to the discipline. I really believe that. And I think that's the bit for a estate agency, that we've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of things going around. There's more to learn and more to educate on, but the discipline of doing it. I stopped going on training courses now and making tons of notes. So you just notes. But I realised I never look back at the notes. And actually, if I just stay in the moment and absorb the training, the learning, the golden nugget is going to come, and then I'm going to make it a habit. And that's the purpose of that training session. I can't take all of the information in on a 2-day training session. I just won't. But the bit that I need, I'll just take from listening and then using it as a habit. And I think it's great to see things like that online platform. And what you're talking about there is not a load of industry people trying to make the industry, but you're getting specialisms from outside and saying, look, listen to this outside perspective. And I've done a lot of that the last 5 years, and I think it's the best way to do it. Stay connected to the industry because it's important, but do that external stuff. Who are you most looking forward to? They won't listen, I promise. You won't embarrass anyone. But of your people you've got coming in to do your training.
I'm really excited to listen to Phil M. Jones and his magic words and exactly what to say, because I think that will make a massive difference to people, really help people, language, curiosity, help me understand. Mm-hmm. There's some magic words that I think will really help people and give them a start that they need. So he's a favourite one, but that's because he's the first one.
Yeah, it's framing words in a certain way plays such a massive part. We had a problem the other day where every Wednesday my eldest daughter goes to acrobatics. So I take her to acrobatics, then I go to the gym and I leave the 4-year-old at home with the wife. Should all be fine, is all fine. But every Wednesday my wife takes the 4-year-old to school and she doesn't want to go into school. And we were kind of like, why is that? And okay, it's because Grace has already gone to acrobatics. I've left and gone to the gym, and it's a different morning situation that unsettles her. She's only been going to school. She's 4. She's been going to school for 7 weeks. She didn't go with anyone from nursery. So she's fine when it's all normal, but when it's outside, Rayo has to peel her off. And then I was talking to Rayo and I was like, what were you saying? She's like, right, well, I was saying, I don't want to go to work either, but we all have to do it. And I said, it's negative framing. And then I did do a bit of a sales training session.
I bet she loved this.
She's not listening to this, so I'm all right to say it. But I did say, if you frame it slightly differently, which is you're going to have a great day at school, you're going to get to play with your friends, it's not raining at lunchtime by the looks of the weather app, so you're going to get to play outside, so you don't have Carpet Kingdom, which is what they have when they're inside, which she's not too much of a fan of. You're going to see Daddy and Grace for tea this afternoon. It's going to be a fun day. Look, there's Mrs. Green, and she looks really excited for the day. If you just frame it into positives rather than going, yeah, I don't really want to have the day either.
Got to.
You know, because she's naturally trying to just sort of rationalise with a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
But the same applies to what we do. And magic words, magic framing, it'd be quite insightful to see what he comes up with, because every single day our job as agents is to communicate, and you can either do it really bad or really, really well, can't you? Just from framing phrases slightly different. So, yeah, that'd be very interesting indeed. And what about out of, you know, kind of the magic moments that you've had this year? You said if you've trained 1,000 people, there'll be one person or one question or one moment that's probably instantly sticks out, you know, that maybe holds a bit of a torch to the industry that you go, actually, you know, we won't get made redundant by AI because of those sort of moments. Is there anything that comes to mind from this year that kind of stands out as a magic moment?
I just think agents need to believe in themselves about what they're worth and their value, and understand that. And really to be a skilled negotiator. I know we're going around in a circle, but I think negotiation is such a massive thing. And for people, it's good to see people get out their comfort zone. I mean, what's scary in all these training sessions is, right, can I have a volunteer?
No one
volunteers.
Don't put your hand up.
You know, and it's, you know, simple questions. And I suppose the easiest thing for me is to see a light bulb moment is just to ask disruptive questions. So, you know, really simple question. You know, I ask people, so on Tuesday, who owns a home? So they all put their hands up. Okay, and how many of you in your dream home? And then, you know, you end up with 9 people that aren't in their dream home. And you go, okay, so if I got you a good price for your property and found you another home, would you move? And you've got 9 market appraisals. And it goes, that's hard. I've been here 2 minutes and I've got 9 market appraisals, and that's why I keep it simple. So just ask disruptive questions. There's questions out there that cost you absolutely nothing, that open the doors, start conversations, and it's all about starting a conversation, and then you never know where that conversation will be. But do that more, get involved in your community, help your community, you know, with Computer for Schools, you know, that's just been incredible. The Markers for Mindfulness and the stationery and what Agents Giving does. And, you know, they've got their winter coat appeal coming up now. Food banks. I mean, it's scary. If I was an agent now, I'd be going to my local food bank on a Friday, doing a video saying this is what's needed, you know, can we come together and help the people? It is so needed. Your sellers, so when you complete on the property, if they've got any leftover food, offer to take it to the food bank. You know, just little things like that. So again, it's very competitive in our industry. So what can you do to find that, you know, difference that makes you stand out, where you're getting people talking about you and remarking about you? Because people aren't going to buy, not going to buy every property through you, but what you're going to do if they get an exceptional experience, they see what you're doing to your community, they're going to going to full circle, they're going to recommend you to your friends, your family, their colleagues and neighbours, and you'll end up getting instructions. I mean, the work I did this week, the guy said to me, you changed what I did 6 years ago by listening to your podcast. It's only taken him 6 years to come and see me and get me in. But that's the point. What you do, you've got people that are silently following you.
Yeah.
You don't know when they're going to want to use your services. So it was like, wow, okay, that was 6 years. Great, at least we finally got there.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll come back again. But on an agency front, you know, if you're putting out all these great content, you know, people are watching you silently. And then when they're ready, they're going to come to you. And then they're going to give you the fee or the investment that you deserve.
Yeah, love that. Disruptive questions, community, keep those basics well disciplined, and there's some super takeaways. So appreciate you coming 10 minutes up the road.
No, it's a long way. Thank you.
Jump on the podcast. Good luck to Tottenham for the rest of the season. And I wholeheartedly,
Hold on.
wholeheartedly don't mean that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it meaningfully.
Cheers, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
A massive thank you once again to Stephen Brown. We talked about Mountain Rushmore, the OG, whatever, compliment that you want to pay Stephen. But actually, his podcast was one of the reasons that I started doing this podcast. When he used to do the podcast with Andy Overman and Luke St. Clair. Was it the Estate Agency podcast, I think? But I started listening to that when I was travelling a little bit in the car, and that was, my inspiration for this. And then so much value, so much knowledge to share. And as you said in the intro, just really interesting to hear his take on agency from his experience, but also the trainer side of it. So we don't often talk on that level, really, with a lot of guests.
Yeah, the core topic was around negotiation, wasn't it? That was the core topic of the episode, the core takeaway. Negotiation, language, one of the cleanest, most organic, authentic answers to world-class agency.
Just kept going. It was brilliant.
It was so good, but he didn't rehearse.
No.
That wasn't scripted.
No,
was just what he felt in the moment, and it came out fantastically well. And we'll definitely take some sound bites from that. But the negotiation thing was interesting because I've been, since Avocado, I've spoken a lot about anti-sales industry, and like estate agency isn't sales, and it's not that. We are marketing, we are consultation. But when you hear that episode, you have to remember that within the consulting, that's where the negotiation comes in. And that's where it gets tarred with that sales industry brush.
Yeah.
And absolutely right. The value in how you can negotiate on behalf of a client and yourself is a real fundamental in a successful business. Those margins, I spoke about when I had that power team, that elite team, ones not tens and hundreds not thousands, that it flashes me back to that to think, no, we were high level back then because we had that accountability and we were negotiating hard for ourselves, for our clients, basically.
And the back to basics mantra of it all as well, just those reminders that actually probably a lot of people listening to this know what to do. We just need to make sure that we do it.
Yeah.
And again, consistency came up. But do you know what I loved about the whole podcast? And I think it typifies Stephen pretty well. The Jim story. So he's not an estate agent when that happens, but he hears two people discussing estate agents. And that conversation has probably gone on, tens of hundreds of times. And I bet estate agents have heard that conversation and just ignored it or taken offence by it. But actually, Stephen cares about the industry so much that he actually takes the time to explain a little bit. And that goes back to the educate that he talks around, and he would have done it in a way that wasn't patronising or anything like that, but he's educating people. He didn't have to do that. He does that because he cares about the industry. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from that story about how we carry ourselves as agents, and actually how much are we educating the public about these standards that we set and these standards that we aspire to. How much are we actually sharing those with the public and using our platforms to educate rather than just beat the drum about how good we are or what house we sold this week, for example.
And, we're 20 years into our career, but when he's listing out those people he's got next year on his estate agency training platform, they're not estate agency trainers. They're people that anyone can learn from. And I'm listening to that thinking, I want a piece of that. Yeah. So, reach out and follow Stephen on LinkedIn, connect with him, look into, I don't know the cost of it. I don't get anything from promoting it. But I think if we want to learn and educate and we want to move ourselves above the norm, above the average, they're the sort of people that you can learn a lot from. So great episode, lots of takeaways, got me thinking a lot, around the negotiation side of things again. And appreciate him coming down.
Yeah, a massive thank you to Stephen. As you know, we do this because we love our profession. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please share it out on social, share it with colleagues, or, indeed do reach out to Stephen on LinkedIn. I'm Mark Worrell. He's Ian Macbeth. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.